That was the night I called my brother. That was the night I stopped pretending everything was fine. I was 32. I had a good job. Project coordinator at an engineering firm in Ottawa, the kind of job where you wear blazers on Monday and spend Friday afternoon eating poutine with your team and laughing about nothing in particular. I had a condo on Elgin Street that I'd painted the kitchen yellow because I wanted to. I had a cat named Biscuit who sat on my laptop every time I tried to work from home. I had, I thought, a good life. And then I met Rowan. He came into my life the way a lot of things do when you're not looking. Through a mutual friend at a house party in Gatineau, standing near the drinks table talking to someone about hockey in a way that was actually funny instead of boring. He was tall, easy to talk to, and he remembered my name the next morning when he texted. That felt like something back then. That felt like a lot. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. I know what people think when they hear that. 2 years, that's enough time to know someone. And I thought I did. I thought I knew exactly what I was walking into. What I didn't fully account for was his mother. Her name was Rowena. Rowena Ashworth. She lived in a house in Westboro that she referred to as the family home, with the kind of reverence people usually reserve for heritage buildings. She had her hair done every 2 weeks at the same salon she'd been going to since 1987. She wore silk blouses on casual occasions and kept a guest book by the front door that she actually expected people to sign when they visited. She was, in short, a woman who had very specific ideas about how the world should operate, and specifically how her son's life should operate. I had met her maybe a dozen times before Rowan proposed. Dinners, a birthday, 2 Christmases. She was never warm to me, but she was never overtly awful either. I told myself that was fine. I told myself she just took time to open up. I said that to Rowan once, early on. I said, "I think your mom just needs more time with me." He looked at me in this way he had, a little sideways, like he was calculating something. "She's like that with everyone," he said. "Don't take it personally." I took it personally. Of course I did. But I swallowed it. When Rowan proposed, on a Thursday night in our kitchen, no grand gesture, just him getting down on one knee between the stove and the island while I was holding a dish towel. I said yes before he finished the sentence. I meant it. I loved him. I loved the version of our life I could see from where I was standing. His family insisted on throwing an engagement party. That was the word Rowena used, insisted. She called Rowan the morning after he told her, and by the afternoon she had already booked the private dining room at a restaurant in Rockcliffe Park. Not a suggestion. A fact. The date was set. The venue was chosen, and the guest list was, as I would come to understand, almost entirely her people. My family was invited, technically. My mother and my stepfather flew in from Halifax. My brother Dean drove up from Kingston with his girlfriend. A couple of my cousins were on the list, but we were outnumbered about 3-to-1 by Ashworth relatives, family friends, people from Rowena's book club, the couple next door, who had apparently known Rowan since he was 8. I didn't say anything about that. I picked a dress. Dark green, tea-length, the kind of thing that felt appropriate without trying too hard, and I showed up. The restaurant was beautiful. I'll say that. Vaulted ceilings, linen tablecloths, the kind of ambient lighting that makes everyone look a little more elegant than they are. Rowena had arranged flowers. Of course she had. White ranunculus and eucalyptus, very tasteful, very controlled. The first hour was fine. People milled around with their drinks, the kind of stiff circling that happens at events where not everyone knows each other. Rowan's aunt complimented my dress. One of his university friends pulled him into a corner to talk about something and stayed there for 20 minutes, while I stood near the hors d'oeuvres, trying to look like I was perfectly comfortable. My mother found me and squeezed my arm. "You look beautiful," she said. "I'm nervous," I told her. That's normal, she said. It's a big night. I didn't tell her what I was actually nervous about. Rowena made her rounds like she was hosting a state dinner. She kissed cheeks. She directed the waitstaff. She laughed at exactly the right volume. When she came to where I was standing with my mother, she smiled at my mother and then looked at me and said, "That color is interesting on you. Very bold." My mother blinked. I smiled and said nothing. We sat down for dinner around 7. I was placed next to Rowan, across from Aunt Phyllis and her husband, with Rowena at the head of the table to Rowan's right. It was a long table, maybe 20 people, and for the first course, everything moved along normally. Soup, conversation, the ambient scraping of silverware. It was during the main course that it started. Rowena leaned across Rowan, actually across him, like he wasn't there, and said to me, "I've been meaning to ask. What are your parents' plans for the wedding contribution?" The table didn't go quiet, but the people nearest to us did. I kept my voice level. "I think that's something Rowan and I will figure out together," I said. "We haven't really started planning yet." "Well, it's something to consider early," she said. "These things add up, and I want to make sure we're all working from the same understanding." Rowan said, "Mum." Just that. One word, soft. She ignored him completely. "My parents are contributing what they're able to," I said. "As are we." Rowena set down her fork. "I only ask because when Rowan's sister got married, the other family had very different expectations about what was appropriate. It caused a great deal of confusion. I'd rather avoid that this time. I'm sure we can discuss it when the time comes." "I'm discussing it now," she said. The aunt across from me was looking at her plate. Her husband was looking at the window. Rowan was looking at me with something on his face that I couldn't read. Apology, maybe, or warning. I picked up my wine glass and took a sip and said calmly, "Then we can disagree about the timing." There was a pause. Rowena smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't involve the eyes, and picked her fork back up. I thought that was it. I thought we had passed through it. We hadn't. After dinner, when people were moving around again, getting dessert, talking in clusters near the bar, I found myself in a small hallway near the restrooms. I wasn't hiding. I was just standing there for 30 seconds, breathing. Just 30 seconds. Rowena found me. She came around the corner and stopped when she saw me, and there was a moment, just a flicker, where I thought she was going to walk past. Instead, she stepped closer. "I want to say something to you," she said. Her voice was very quiet. We were alone in the hallway. "Of course," I said. "You are not what I envisioned for my son." She said it the way you'd read a prepared statement. Flat. Certain. You're pleasant enough, but you come from a different world, and I think you know that. I stared at her. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I think you are," she said. "Your family doesn't have the same foundation, the same background. Rowan has a certain life, a certain set of expectations. I worry that you don't fully understand what you're agreeing to." I felt heat crawl up the back of my neck. "I think that's between Rowan and me. It will affect all of us." She tilted her head, just slightly. "I'm not saying this to be unkind. With respect," I said, "it feels unkind." And then she slapped me. Not hard enough to knock me sideways, but hard enough. An open hand across my left cheek, quick and sharp, the kind of thing that takes a second to register because your brain refuses to process it. I stood there. My hand came up to my face on its own. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "I barely touched you. I was still processing it. Still standing in that hallway trying to understand what had just happened." "You need to understand your place," she said. "And if you can't do that, you need to walk away before this goes any further, because I will not allow my son to be dragged down by someone who doesn't belong here." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She turned and walked back toward the dining room. I stood in that hallway for a long moment. My cheek was warm. My hands were shaking, very slightly, the kind of shaking you can only notice if you hold them out flat. I walked back into the party. I found Rowan near the bar. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Sure, what's?" "Now," I said, "outside." We stepped out onto the patio. It was October, cold enough to see your breath. I told him what his mother had said. I told him what she had done. He went quiet. He looked at the ground. He said, "She can be a lot." "I know that, Rowan. She hit me. She gets worked up. She doesn't always." "She hit me," I said again. "I'll talk to her," he said. "I promise I'll talk to her." I looked at him for a long moment. I looked at this man I had said yes to 4 months ago in our kitchen, this man I had made plans with, this man who was now standing on a patio in the cold telling me his mother gets worked up. "Okay," I said. "Okay." I went back inside. I found the hallway near the coat room and I took out my phone and I called my brother. Dean picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said, "how's the party?" I didn't answer right away. "What happened?" he said. It wasn't a question. "Can you come get me?" I said. My voice came out very steady, which surprised me. "And bring your lawyer brain, because I think I'm going to need it." He was there, in 22 minutes. I know because I was watching the clock on my phone. I didn't go back into the main room. I waited near the entrance, and I watched people through the glass panel beside the door, laughing, eating dessert, not knowing what had happened 20 feet away in a hallway that smelled like restaurant carpet cleaner. Rowan found me once. He came to the entrance and he said, "Are you coming back in?" "No," I said. He looked at me, then at his phone, then back at me. "My mother's asking where you are." "Tell her I'm fine," I said. He hesitated for a moment. Then he went back in. Dean arrived in his coat, his girlfriend Faye staying in the car. He came through the door and looked at me, and I didn't even have to say anything. He just looked at my face, and something in his expression shifted. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. I told him. All of it. The dinner conversation, the hallway, the slap, what she said. I told him what Rowan had said on the patio. Dean listened without interrupting. He had always been like that, quiet when it mattered, not trying to fill space with reactions. When I finished, he said, "Did anyone see it?" "I don't think so." "Okay." He paused. "You can file a report. What she did is assault. Doesn't matter where it happened." "I know," I said. "Do you want to do that tonight?" I thought about it. I thought about walking back into that restaurant and the look on Rowena's face and Rowan telling me she gets worked up. I thought about the engagement ring on my finger, which I was suddenly very aware of. "Not tonight," I said, "but I'm not letting it go." Dean nodded. "Good." He walked me out. I did not say goodbye to Rowena. I did not say goodbye to the table of Ashworth relatives or the couple from next door who had known Rowan since he was 8. I got into Dean's car and Faye reached back from the front seat and squeezed my hand and didn't say anything, and that was exactly right. Rowan texted me 40 minutes later. "Are you okay?" "Mom says she's sorry if she upset you." If she upset me, I thought. I set my phone face down on the kitchen counter and fed Biscuit and went to bed. What came next, I didn't expect. I had assumed Rowena would play the whole thing down. I had assumed she would call Rowan the next morning and tell him I had been oversensitive, that she had simply been trying to have a frank conversation, that young women today couldn't handle directness. I had assumed Rowan would relay some softened version of this to me, and we would have a difficult conversation. And eventually, maybe, she would offer something shaped loosely like an apology. That's what I assumed. What actually happened was that Rowena called Rowan the next morning and told him that I had spoken to her disrespectfully in the hallway, that I had threatened her, and that she feared for her safety. I found this out from Rowan, who called me at 9:30 with a strange edge in his voice. "She says you threatened her," he said. I sat down on my kitchen chair. "Rowan," I said very carefully. What exactly did she tell you? He relayed it. She had apparently told him that I had cornered her, raised my voice, told her I would make her regret interfering in our relationship, that she had only touched my arm to try to calm me down and I had reacted as though she'd assaulted me. I sat with that for a moment. She hit me, I said, open hand, across my face, and then told me I didn't belong in your family. Silence on the other end. I know it's hard to hear, I said. I know she's your mother. But what I'm telling you is true, and what she told you is not. More silence. She's never done anything like that before, he said finally. To you, I said. He didn't answer. I'm going to file a report, I said, not because I want to destroy anything, but because what she did was assault, and if I don't say so, it will happen again. Maybe to me, maybe to someone else. You'd really do that? To my mother? I noticed the phrasing. To my mother, not about what she did, not over what happened. To his mother. I'm going to do that because of what she did, I said. That's not the same thing. He said he needed time to think. I told him that was fine. I called Dean after I hung up. I told him I wanted to move forward with the report. He drove me to the station that afternoon, and I sat across from a constable and told her exactly what had happened. She was professional, not warm exactly, but matter of fact in a way I appreciated. She took my statement. She told me what the process would look like. I went home and called my mother. My mother was quiet for most of it. When I finished, she said, "What does Rowan say?" He's thinking, I said. There was a pause. My mother has a specific kind of silence. That means she is choosing her words with great care. Okay, she said. I love you. What do you need? That was the moment I actually cried. Not in the restaurant hallway, not on the phone with Dean, not at the police station. Right then, on my kitchen floor with Biscuit walking back and forth across my shins, hearing my mother ask what I needed. I don't know yet, I said. I'll figure it out. The week that followed was strange and slow. Rowan came over twice. The first time, we talked in circles. He wasn't ready to accept what I was telling him about his mother, but he wasn't quite able to dismiss it either. He sat at my kitchen table and turned his coffee mug around in his hands and said things like, I'm trying to understand, and this is really complicated, and I watched him and thought about the man near the drinks table at a party in Gatineau, talking about hockey and making me laugh. The second time he came over, he told me that his mother had spoken to his aunt, Phyllis, the woman who had been sitting across from us at dinner, staring at her plate. He said his mother had told Phyllis a version of events that made me the aggressor. He said Phyllis had believed her, and that Phyllis had apparently called several other people. I listened to all of this, and then I said, Did you ask Phyllis what she saw at dinner? During the conversation about my family's finances. He looked at me. Ask her, I said. She was right there. Ask her what she saw. He called Phyllis that evening. I don't know what Phyllis said to him. But he called me back 2 hours later and he sounded different, quieter. Like something had shifted in him. She said she saw my mother lean across me, he said. At dinner. Yes, I said. And she said she could see you were uncomfortable. I was. Another silence. And then, my mother's version of the hallway. I've been going back and forth on it. But I think I know which one is true. It should have felt like a win. It didn't, really. It felt like grief. Because understanding that his mother had lied to him didn't fix the fact that his first response had been to call me and repeat what she'd said. It didn't fix the fact that you'd really do that to my mother was the sentence he'd chosen. I thought about that for a long time. There's something else that came out in that week, something I hadn't known and wouldn't have guessed. Dean, who is methodical and careful and absolutely the right person to have in your corner when things go sideways, had asked around through some work contacts. Not digging exactly, just listening. And what he found was this: Rowan's previous long-term relationship. A woman named Evelyn, 3 years before me, had ended partly because of Rowena. The story, as it had been told to enough people that it had circulated quietly, was that Rowena had interfered steadily throughout the relationship, undermining Evelyn with Rowan, creating tension, until eventually Evelyn had ended it. Dean heard this from 2 separate sources who had no reason to lie. I sat with that information for a long time. I called Rowan and told him what I'd heard. He was quiet. Then he said, "I didn't know you knew about Evelyn." "I didn't," I said, "until now." "Is it true?" Another pause, longer this time. My mother had concerns about Evelyn. It was complicated. "Did your mother interfere in your relationship with Evelyn?" "She has strong opinions," he said. "That's not what I asked." He didn't answer. Which was, I suppose, its own kind of answer. I took off the engagement ring that night. I sat on my couch and I looked at it for a long time. It was a beautiful ring. Oval stone, rose gold band, the kind of thing I would have chosen myself if I'd been choosing. I thought about what it represented. Not just Rowan, but the future I had been building toward. The kitchen in some house we hadn't found yet. The life that had seemed possible from where I was standing 4 months ago. I put the ring in the small dish on my dresser where I keep things I haven't decided about yet. 3 days later, I called Rowan and I said, "I don't think I can do this." He said, "What do you mean?" "I mean the engagement," I said. "I mean the wedding, and the family dinners, and the woman who slapped me becoming my mother-in-law. I've been sitting with all of it, and I keep arriving at the same place." He said, "We can set limits. I can talk to her." "You've been going to talk to her," I said. "You said that on the patio in October." He didn't say anything. "I love you," I said. "I want to be clear about that. This isn't about not loving you. But I can't spend the next 30 years managing her and hoping she doesn't do something worse. And I don't think you can protect me from her. I think she's shown us who she is, and I think you've shown me something too, in how you responded. And I have to be honest about what I saw." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Is there anything I could say right now that would change your mind?" I thought about it honestly. "I don't think so," I said. "Not right now. Maybe not ever. I'm sorry." We talked for another hour. Sad, tired, circular in the way endings are. No shouting, no cruelty. Just the slow, awful work of unraveling something. I drove the ring over 2 days later. I handed it to Rowan at his door. He looked terrible, which made me feel terrible, which is not the simple triumph people seem to expect from these stories. "I hope you're okay," I said. And I meant it. "I will be," he said, eventually. I drove home with the radio on, not listening to it. The streets were gray, and the leaves were mostly gone by then, the kind of November afternoon that feels like a held breath. The police report moved through its process. Rowena was contacted. She hired a lawyer. Through that lawyer, she sent a written apology, formal, legalistic, notably short on actual remorse. Dean read it and said it was what he'd expected. I accepted it and moved on. What surprised me more was a message I got about 2 months later from Evelyn. Rowan had apparently told her what had happened, some version of it. She found me on LinkedIn and sent a short, careful message. She said she was sorry to hear it. She said she knew what Rowena was capable of, and she had sometimes wondered if she should have said something sooner to someone. She said she hoped I was okay. I wrote back and said I was. I meant it, mostly. Here is what I know now that I didn't know then. There is a version of my life where I stayed, where I swallowed what happened in that hallway, where I accepted the apology that was never quite offered, where I built a marriage in the shadow of a woman who had already told me exactly how she saw me. I can imagine that life. I think it would have been quieter in some ways. I think it would have been very lonely in others. I chose the other version. I chose the yellow kitchen I painted myself, and biscuit on my laptop, and my brother who showed up in 22 minutes without being asked twice. I chose the life where I know what I'm worth. Rowena called me once, about 6 weeks after everything had settled. I don't know how she got my number. She'd always had it, I suppose. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, 3 minutes long. I listened to it once. It was the kind of message where someone explains themselves at great length without quite apologizing, where every sentence is about how difficult things have been for them. I deleted it and went to make dinner. I still live on Elgin Street. I still work at the same firm. Last spring, I took a weekend trip to Prince Edward Island with my mother, and we ate lobster rolls on a dock, and she told me something she hadn't told me before, which was that the first time she met Rowena at the engagement dinner the autumn before, she had come home and said to my stepfather that she was worried. Not about Rowan, about the mother. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked her. She thought about it. "You seemed happy," she said. "I didn't want to be the one to say it." I nodded. I understood that. I've thought about it since. What it means to let someone be happy even when you're worried. How care can look like silence, and silence can look like permission. How much we all spend trying not to be the one to say the hard thing until someone does something in a hallway that removes the option. "Next time, say it," I told my mother. She laughed a little. "Deal," she said. The water was very still that afternoon. The lobster roll was excellent. Biscuit was at home, bothering my downstairs neighbor, who loves him and pretends not to. I was 32 when all of this happened. I'm 34 now. Not that much time in the scheme of things, but I feel, most days, like a woman who knows exactly where she stands.